Is there a way I can? Oh no, I guess it's in the group, right? So I was gonna
Yep,
say, can
we're
I
in the group.
share
We're
this?
on
But I
my
guess it's just
feed.
this is private, right?
We are actually everywhere. We're on my feed, which is public, so you can share it from there.
Oh, I can
We're
share it onto
on.
my wall. Can I do that right now?
Yep. Hi, everybody. We're doing some technical stuff. So Philip and I started chatting before we went live, and I interrupted in mid-sentence and said, "This is the conversation I want to be having live. I'm done with you now. We're going live." So now if you go to my feed,
Oh, I'm already sharing. No worries.
awesome. There you go.
I think that should
Beautiful.
do it.
Well, while Philip is doing that, I will do a quick introduction because this guy is awesome and I can't wait to have this conversation with him today. So I met Philip by basically hunting him down online and being majorly moved by his website. He's a documentary style photographer and a creativity coach. What I loved about your website, and this is what we were talking about, Philip, is that it automatically lured me in because beneath this wonderful video where he introduces himself is in big bold letters, and I'm not the only artist in the room. And he went on to talk about that a little bit. And it's just during the time where I'm starting to think of myself as, more than a CFO, more than a coach. Like there's an art to what I do. There's a magic to what I do. And I'm starting to kind of own that. And you were just saying, Philip, you're starting to own that artist identity a little more.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, Pam, thank you so much
Oh, we're so glad to have you.
for making this happen. I think it's so cool that you are taking this kind of action to be not only putting yourself in like more present light, so people can see and hear from you, even though we're all, in our homes, but also you're uplifting other people to do the exact same thing. So I've been doing similar kinds of work to that my whole life, but so much of the journey is being able to sit in your identity and not be doubting it. And so that's kind of this whole thing you're talking about where just a couple of years ago, I would say I'm an artist with a question mark at the end.
Huh.
And one of my best friends, Kimberly, who's a journalist at CBC, which is a public broadcaster in
Yeah.
in
In
Canada.
Yeah.
She's like a investigative
Oh,
journalist. She works
cool.
at the investigative unit. And so she said to me, Phil, I cannot wait for the day when you can say I'm an artist without a shred of doubt. And that sentence made me think like, wow, I am choosing to be the one to put the doubt on whether or not I have valid artistry and I am
Mhm.
being valid as an artist in this world. And
And
the
that
fact is we're all, artists, as I said, first thing.
even not stepping to the we're all artists, because I do want to talk about that. I think that's a really
Sure.
important thing
Okay.
for people to listen to and think about. Oh, there's my artists in the
I
background.
love your
You can
dogs.
see the tail right there as they guard me from whatever's happening out there. Hang on, guys. So the thing that I love about what you just said is there's a little bit of the whole imposter syndrome thing, which every single one of us deals with. But
Yes.
then there's something else there, and that is I looked up your website. I found out a little bit about you before we ever had our first conversation. And in my mind, the only thing that came to my mind was an artist who has a business as opposed to anything else. So just to validate that
Thank
where you're going with that is like, yeah, that's how I see what you do. Because when we talk about how you do what you do, which I want to dive into, that's where it really came to me that there's so much more artist in that because you're interpreting me and my personality, my dogs, my kid, my sense of humor, all of that, and creating a way to photograph me that's different. So talk a little bit about that and how your art and how you work with your clients to create a whole different photography experience.
Now, this is how you know that you're have a natural business person because you immediately allowed me the space to share about my work and my business part of what I do. Because as artists, when artists interview artists, I will answer your question, don't worry. When artists interview artists, they just talk about the art making process, the creative process, and like maybe at the end they'll say like, yeah, and I also kind of sell paintings and you can see them on my website. Like it's such an afterthought. You bring it first and foremost.
It's like, I want
Because
people
you
to know what you
understand that
do.
unless the artists and the humans and the people of this world that we want to be see doing cool stuff are paid, then they can't do the cool stuff anymore.
Yes.
So,
yes.
To go back to your question, which
so
is
now you have to answer it. Yep.
like how I approach subjects
What's your
or
magic? Yeah.
clients or the people I work with. First of all, the people I work with are generally one of three categories. So families and all the things around families, functions, occasions, families, couples. So people who are deciding to become family with one another. That's when you're a couple, you're not family by blood, but you're choosing your family when you're a couple. And I think that there's so much magic there. And then all the things that surround couples, engagements, weddings, etc. And entrepreneurs and artists. So this is the third category, which, you know, which you fit into, Pam, for sure. I think you're probably a little bit of both. And entrepreneurs and artists these days are putting themselves online more than ever. Yes. And people are making their very first impressions about you based on how you're showing up online. You know that you're doing this mission, and I know that with the work that I do. And so why I think it's so important to work with somebody who's actually going to see and kind of uplift the real you when you're making something like a photograph or a video together is there's many people who can point a camera at you and you know, take a picture, but you might have your guard up. You might not feel comfortable. You might not feel like you're in your vibe. You might not feel like, you know, there's so many different other feelings that you're actually putting online when you put that photo online.
And it's amazing to me while you're there, everything we put into that little circle that is the camera lens, like everything we attribute it to it, that changes us from having a natural conversation to, oh, I have to pose. And that's what I really loved about how you approach this, which is the main reason I love chatting about. But I'll let you go ahead. Sorry. I tend to.
No, I think it's great that you're excited about it. My ideal client is somebody who's excited about this stuff, because if you're not, then while it still could be a really maybe even more of a meaningful process for you, it might be just a little bit harder for you to take the leap, because I feel like the best thing to do in life, if you want to make a change, I'm going to do a little bit creativity coaching here, is to take the next obvious step from where you're at right now. So many people think I need to take this crazy step that's like seems unfathomable to me, but really you're more likely to resist that step, to not actually take it, to not make the move if you're not there yet. So the next obvious step from where you're at right now, where am I at today? What's the smallest little step I can take that is a step towards where I want to be going, but isn't necessarily the step of moving across the world or, you know, starting your own business or whatever it is. Like how, and so a great coach or a facilitator or whatever will help you do that work of figuring out what that next obvious step is, rather than being overwhelmed by whatever. And it goes right back to making photos together. When we're making photos together, the very first question I like to ask people is, where do you like to spend your time that makes you feel alive? Like when you're an artist, when you're an entrepreneur, when you're a family, when you're a couple, are you going to feel more comfortable in, like, you know, studio photography is great, don't get me wrong, for in some scenarios, but you're probably going to feel the most alive in a space that you already know, in a space where you already spend time. And even just that question, which sounds obvious, is is an amazing starting place because it's starting from where you're already at. And so if you can build steps from there, then eventually you can get to really intimate moments really quickly together.
I love that because it has to do with it takes the mystery out of the lens because you don't put the lens in the face right away. You're figuring out what makes the person comfortable and kind of where to do it. In fact, guys, I've already begged Philip. I'm going to have him do like a whole family thing. I'm bringing the kid in. I'm bringing family up. I'm bringing everybody in because we're just going to do one big massive photography shoot here in Pennsylvania when COVID's gone, or maybe in Atlanta where Lindsay is. But everybody needs headshots for their businesses, and I'm blessed to be surrounded by a family full of artists because we are very close, almost family, with a choir that we've been working with and known for, I think it's 12 years now. And they basically helped raise our daughter as the musical artist she is today as well. So
cool.
The fact that artists and what COVID did for artists or to artists in a lot of ways, it's been really fascinating for me to see artists' response to it and how much additional, in a way, as hard as it was, the performances disappeared. Choral performances, art shows, all of that stuff just fell off the grid with COVID.
It's a tragedy.
But so the silver lining, which I can't help but find a silver lining, is that these folks are now recognizing, wow, I can still be an artist, get paid for what I do, and do it in a whole way I'd never thought about before when I was constrained by these performances. Not constrained because they're awesome in and of themselves, but I feel them breaking out of these shells and finally getting seen by the world and valued for what they bring. So that to me is a thing where just all of this sort of intersects, both business, entrepreneurship, photography, artistry, all of it kind of comes into play. And that's what I love about what you're doing. There may not be as many weddings or family gatherings for photo shoots, but entrepreneurs I don't just want a headshot. I want something that captures the essence of my madness, somebody that's going to spend enough time to learn that and really say, okay, here's what we can do for you.
The difference between a business that comes from an artist rather than the art that comes from a business is they're going to take the time. They're going to put some of their spirit into it. They're going to actually want to engage with you beyond a transaction level. And a lot of us aren't used to that. It's a shocking thing. It's shocking when somebody wants to have a phone call with you. Like, a lot of people are terrified of hopping on the phone, right?
Yeah.
Or on video chat or whatever. And they just want to immediately, what's the price? Because that's what you do when you go to a store these days. So many stores, you go and you look at the price, you look at your phone, you find out if there's a cheaper price somewhere else. And that's, if you're buying, a toaster, maybe that makes sense. Maybe I would argue that even with a toaster, it doesn't, but maybe with a toaster, maybe you could make the position that, but if it's something where it's about you, right? Your photograph is about you, then you're going to want to work with somebody who actually cares about getting to know you a little bit. Right?
And place that. And I love that. So I have to, of course, ask, what you think is the most bizarre photo shoot you've ever done? Like location or setup or...
You're so good at questions. I don't know if I don't have a like a off the ball.
Yeah, I didn't give him any warning on these questions, guys.
So much of that is less like kind of where and more who. So I wouldn't necessarily use the word bizarre, but since I do work with different kinds of artists, there's one subject that I work with quite often named Micah Edwards. And Micah is from Jamaica. Micah moved from Jamaica. Do you know Micah, by the way, Pam?
I don't think so. I'm going to have to check, but it doesn't ring a bell.
Okay. So moved from Jamaica to Canada, part of the LGBTQ community in
Mhm.
Jamaica. Micah experienced a lot of hardship based on just who they were,
Due
and
to that, okay.
yes, and a lot of serious bullying.
Eesh.
And so here in Canada, a little bit more of a safer zone. And Mike has been on a magical personal development journey and has produced some incredible work, including a clothing collection. And on it, it says the words, "I am necessary." And so you're wearing a piece of clothing that says, "I am necessary." The other person is reading your shirt saying, "I am necessary." And and they say to you, "Oh, so you're necessary." And it's like, you should read it again. And so then they read it, "I am necessary." It is validating the
And
reader to
I
say,
love
"I
that.
am." It is a self-validation thing. And so Micah sells this clothing specifically to raise funds for initiatives in Jamaica to support LGBT.
Oh, bless it. Bless their
And
heart.
so not
How
only
long were
that,
they there before they came over?
I think about half of their life.
Wow.
And so they're in their late 20s now,
Yep.
and so not just that, but as you can imagine, Micah is a very eccentric personality. So when working together, he lets me take complete control and do.
Whatever.
Often Micah's lying on the ground with like clothes drooped over themselves, and then there's just so much going on, and
That
I
is
think that
fun.
that's so magical when somebody is so free,
Yep.
uh, and that could be just such a magical experience.
And there's where that relationship becomes so, so, so important. I've had photo shoots done at events that I've attended and that, they throw in a free headshot or whatever, and you get a picture. But
Yep.
I've also had, when my wife and I got engaged, a very dear friend of ours, also an artist, a singer, came and did a photo shoot of my wife, myself, and my daughter. And she spent a lot of time learning from us ahead of time. Well, she knew us, so she knew who we are. And she said, "Hey, here's where we're going to go, and we're going to take the pictures." And they really reflected the family, and it's because of that trust that we were able to do basically whatever she said. We said, "Okay, we're going to do that thing," and
Yeah.
it's an amazing thing, and I think it's important, and it's not just in photography. It's in every type of art that we're kind of making an agreement between the artist and I was gonna say audience because I'm so used to singers, about what we're talking about, what we're doing, and there has to be trust there in order for the performer, the photographer, the artist to feel comfortable communicating, but then also for the receiver to be able to resonate with it in a way that's comfortable for them. And I think that's why this is
Yeah.
so cool. And photography really, to me, getting the right photographer, getting somebody who can really kind of see inside who you are. I think you call it, the heart. We're all coming from the heart, is just a really special thing.
Yeah, Pam. I think you're spot on. And I think I want to underline, you mentioned the word trust a few times. And to be honest with you, my ideal client isn't somebody who has a certain set of qualities. It's somebody who doesn't have one quality. And the one quality is they're unwilling to trust. If you are
Huh.
unwilling to trust another person to be a professional at their job, then you're only ever going to live in a world where you are the only opinion in the room. You're
Wow.
the only professional or the only viewpoint in the room. If you give just a little bit of your trust away to this other person and let them take control or power of that moment, and if they're great, they're going to give it right back to you, but they're going to give it right back to you through them rather than being immediately blocked. And then in those instances, there's a wall where there's no trust. There's a wall between the subject and the artist. And if there's a wall, you can't see through a wall. You can't interact through a wall. There's nothing that happens through a wall. And so all it is really is a choice for you to be able to be an ideal client of somebody like me, the choice of allowing yourself to trust them.
I am so glad we're recording this call, because that last 45 seconds to a minute is probably one of the most profound things I've ever heard. And I'm going to play it back later today, and I'm going to send you the text of that, because what you just said is amazing. And
Thank you.
it speaks to a lot more than photography. It's
Absolutely.
every relationship. It's every business relationship. It's every, it's ever. Here's a great question from someone who happens to be my sister, but and we'll get to that in a second. But is it? It's owners and employees. It's team members. It's everything. I like honestly cannot wait to play that back. And my sister actually just agreed about how profound that statement was. I'm going to take a clip of that. But yeah, my sister's asking, is it ever difficult for you to trust the people you photograph?
That's such an interesting question. I just wanted to, first of all, thank you so much. I love when people say that there's something profound was shared, and I love when that happens. Also, I am also a creativity coach. So that's not something that I'm just doing off the cuff. It's something that's a major part of my business as well.
Awesome.
So is it ever difficult to trust the people you photograph? Wow. That question I could probably write a book on, because there's so many levels. And it does a lot to me, because it makes me feel things, but it doesn't bring up thoughts necessarily. It brings up feelings. It brings up feelings of sadness, because what it says to me is, is that what it's really asking to me is like, is there ever moments where you feel unsafe, right? Is it difficult for you to trust the people you photograph? That's saying that the people I'm photographing, I don't feel safe, because trust and safety are, brother,
tied
sister.
hand in hand.
Yeah. And so yeah, there's been moments of my life where I feel unsafe, but that's why we choose to be professionals at certain things, right? Is a professional knows how to handle scenarios where they don't feel safe, and they know when to speak when they're not feeling like the situation is safe. And a moment finally popped up for me just now. And this was the moment, as I mentioned, I like to photograph people in the place where they feel the most alive. And so I had a client come, and they came to my house, and they wanted to try to do some photos in front of a backdrop. And it was not going well. They were closed off, the vibe, the energy, it was feeling stuck. And it didn't feel like there was much trust evolving. It felt like the situation was devolving. And so I stopped it, and I asked her, kind of, let's unpack this moment. Like, what is it? And so she was really just saying, like, I want to be connecting with nature. And so I literally said, let's go to the ravine right now, and we're going to continue the photo shoot there. The moment we got to the ravine, she came to life. And she's told me many times, these are the most, her favorite photos that she's ever seen of herself. Wow. Not only that, this photo shoot was a couple of years ago. She's still sharing these photos on Facebook because she's a coach. And so she shares these photos to her feed with stories from her life. And she reuses the same photos over and over again with different stories. And it's helped her build her coaching business. Photos can be used, over and over again. If they're great, you don't have to necessarily have tons of photo shoots. You can use the same ones 6 months later, and nobody really remembers that you used it before. Or if you pair it with another story, it's a whole other meaning.
I love that, because what that said was you not necessarily, it does, like you said, is a multi-level question. You didn't trust her choice. And so you said, hey, nope, backdrop's not the thing. It's backdrop's not the thing. The thing is, let's get you outside to nature where you belong. And you knew enough to, like you said, you unpacked that choice and said, nah, we've got to change this. So another question here from Yvonne, and I think you answered it, but she has another one. So hang on, I'm going to move that one off and put her newest one up.
Wow, this is cool.
And said, what
Got
about
an
people
active
who are,
audience.
they're great. I love these people. I love them. And a lot of people will watch this later as well. If you're on replay and you have questions before we get to Yvonne's question here, drop it in here. We will tag Philip with it, whether you're watching on my feed and YouTube here, I will tag him and we'll get you an answer. But Yvonne's asking, what about people who are stiff in front of the camera? Like, say you find the perfect location, you've built the trust, and they're still like, that lens just does something. What do you do then?
Well, first of all, I don't believe that people are one way. So that question kind of assumes that they're always stiff in front of a camera. And it's like, to me, that's why compatibility is so important. First off, what about somebody who doesn't like kissing is a good question that I would compare to that. It's like, well, who don't they like kissing? If they don't like kissing anybody at all, then, you know, maybe that's some self-work that they need to get done. Maybe they only like kissing one person, or maybe they like kissing lots of people. I think that there isn't a person who's stiff in front of the camera. There's challenges with compatibility with whoever is taking your photo, and there's challenges with how comfortable. You mentioned all the pieces have been lined up where, you know, where the location's great, everybody's relaxed, and then the camera comes up. And so that's why, you know, as a photographer, you don't want to have the camera in front of your face the whole time. You want to constantly be going back and forth between being there with the person and having the camera up when they're in a moment. And so there are certain exercises I actually have for people who are particularly more uncomfortable in front of a camera. And those exercises are about, you know, let's say you're doing a branding photo shoot. And so I'll ask you to reflect on tell me some qualities of the person you want people to see when they look at this photo. You know, maybe they'll say loyal. And so then I'll say, think of a time, a story, a moment in your life when you felt like loyalty, like you were, you know, being a loyal friend or a loyal family member. And so then they'll share that story with me. In the action of sharing that, all of a sudden, they're not there taking a photo. They're there sharing a story. And then you can pop up, grab a couple photos, and their head isn't in the moment of, I'm taking photos right now. Their head is in the story of sharing a loyal moment. Or let's say it's a couple. A game I love to play is both of you think of a color, but think of the same color as the other person. So they're both trying to think what the other person would say. So that gets them into their thinking about the other person, you know, what color is the other person going to say? And then I say on the count of 3, I want you to both say the color that you're thinking of with at the same time as each other. So then, you know, 3, 2, 1, they'll say the color. I don't snap the photo in that moment. I wait a few moments for them to hear the reaction of, oh, you got the color. Oh, you thought I would say purple. Like, you know, they're in this game. They're having fun together. And then you play that game one more time and see how it evolves from there, because then they're going to try again. Like maybe they'll switch. Maybe the other one will say orange and this one will say purple. And then, you know, they're having fun. They're interacting. And that's just an intro level kind of game to get people out of their heads and into the moment. Right?
I can't wait until we're all vaccinated to have this photo shoot. There's just going to be so much fun, especially, you know, from a branding standpoint. I love that because our expressions change. When I'm thinking about my client, or I'm thinking about how I want to serve my client, or you ask me, what is it I want them to feel when they're working with me? That changes everything about my micro expressions, my everything, how I hold my head, how I hold my shoulders. And it's, I love that, because then you're going to capture so much more about what people are about.
Yeah, Pam, there is more to photography than knowing how to use a camera. I
I
think that in many ways is like kind of the most basic foundational level, but maybe even like that's more of like a third tier level. I think the most important part of photography is being able to bring people into this moment and feel
Yeah.
engaged,
Yep.
because it doesn't matter what camera you're shooting with if what's happening in front of the camera isn't a comfortable experience.
It's what moves it from a technical skill to the artistry, I think, is what you're really saying. It's, you know, and not that you can make a comparison with accounting, but I will. There's bookkeeping and there's being a CFO, and those are two very different things. But you have to certainly just have that bookkeeping down pat, in
Yeah.
order to do the artistry of CFOing, or in your case, the artistry of photography. I absolutely love that. So
Thank
if
you.
somebody's getting ready for a branding shoot, let's say.
Yeah.
How do you, I'm somebody who, so my brand sometimes is what's a mofo sweatshirt, and sometimes I'm dressed up in a suit. I am all over the map with
Amazing. That's great
stuff.
news.
So, like, when somebody's doing a branding shoot, is there clothing to reflect the brand? Is there, like, how do you deal with all? Do you comment on all that? Do you have them bring that to the table themselves? How does that all work?
Happens through a real conversation about who you're being, and if that's who you want to be sharing with others. If that's working, great. If let's say you, Pam, who you're being seems to be something that's working quite well, where people feel so comfortable connecting with you. And what's great is there's a coaching element to that. How can we tell the story of Pam hanging out in her comfy clothes at home with her dogs? And then how can we tell the story of Pam in like serious mode, getting shit done, like
In the
during, like
boardroom, right?
power hour, right? How can we use
Pam's
those two
Power Hour,
stories
I love that.
to compare and contrast the different sides of your personality that make you into the full human that Pam is, the full amazing person that the other person will be working with? And how
I
can we
love
make
that.
all of those stories make you shine in your brightest light, right?
I
And
love that.
then of course we'll take the photos, and you won't even have any hesitation about taking some photos in your sweats with your dogs, because you know how you're going to use those photos, the
Yep.
story you're going to share with those photos, why you're taking those photos. Like why you're taking those photos answers the question off the bat in terms of kind of what you're going to be wearing, what you're going to be doing, where you are going to be, where you're going to be.
Yeah. And that actually speaks to one of the things I love the most about being an entrepreneur now is, I mean, I loved my corporate life. Don't get me wrong. I loved every job I ever had in my career. I've been blessed with that. But now the really neat thing is, so many of the people I worked with in corporate just shake their heads. They're like, you're getting on a business call like that? Or, you do your work with people on Facebook and Zoom, and they just kind of cock their heads like the dogs do. Like, I don't understand this, but I got this job now where I can just be myself. And
How
that
cool is
just,
that?
yeah, it just changes everything. And that's what it sounds like you've got going there as well. So that's just awesome. So Jen actually says the timing on this is great because she's got a branding shoot coming up.
Well, now she knows the questions to ask, right?
Yeah,
When she's talking to her photographer. I hope that goes well for you, Jen, first of all,
that's
by the way.
exactly right.
I wanted to make one comment on what you shared. And to me, it's top of the list on my values board that I built with my very first life coach a few years ago. Like the person who coached me, which was the values of kind of how I want to be kind of focusing on. So I got energy, accountability, growth, leadership, collaboration, and separating myself from my artwork. I could talk about all these for a long time, but the reason I brought it up is because of the first one, energy. So the fact is, Pam, I want to ask you a question for a moment. Do you feel more energized and less de-energized because you don't have to put on a shtick in terms of what you're wearing or how you're
Oh,
showing up to
God,
meetings
yes.
and all these other things. Do you feel like you're able to tap into sources of energy you didn't even know existed before?
1,000%. 1,000% that hit the nail
Ding,
on the
ding, ding. This
head.
is
Mhm,
why we're entering a world of entrepreneurship, is because people are realizing that by giving themselves away to the point that they can't be themselves anymore, they're actually limiting serious parts of like their energy field that
mhm,
they literally are limiting access to for themselves. So
mhm,
they're going to be tapped out at the end of the week. 40 hours of working, they're going to be tapped out, exhausted, not necessarily have energy for time with family, friends, and
mhm,
to give their full self to all that. Versus maybe you can work as an artist, entrepreneur, yourself included. You could probably work 60, 70, 80 hours of the week and still feel energized to do all the
mhm,
other things in your life because you're not putting on any shtick. You're just being you.
mhm. That's really interesting too, because you just made a connection for me between something that's definitely happened since I've been an entrepreneur that until you said it that way, it never occurred to me. And in the first year and a half after when I started doing this, which was back in 2016, I think I was still trying to be an entrepreneur in a corporate way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but after I
That's how
got
we
over
all start.
that, yeah, after I got over that and until now, my kind of spiritual awakening has been exponential. And if I would never even have uttered the words spiritual awakening to
I
you
know, right?
before I left corporate. So you just connected a lot of dots for me on how that's all. Of course, this is happening because I'm all of that stuff. And I didn't think I was ever putting on pretenses or putting on a personality. Like I brought my
No, we don't realize we're
personality,
doing it
but once I was able to say, yeah, yeah, I'm going to spend some
until we
time
have
thinking
something to
about that.
compare it to.
Yeah,
So
I'm
once
going
we
to really,
realize that, when I realized that I can make more money, work less hours, and feel happier doing my own thing, then the idea of not doing my own thing has become more and more like absurd.
not even on
It's
the
like it's an
radar.
absurdity.
Yep. It's not even on the radar. And I think we've seen a little bit of this in the call today, but I have to ask you about it. Talk to me about creativity coaching and who that's for.
Yeah. That's a great question. It's a new offering because the fact is the pandemic hit and the photography business, which was going to be set up to be a freaking stellar year, literally disappeared overnight.
2020. Yep.
And so I figured, how can I use my lifetime of building these kind of life skills of being able to be resilient, of being able to build my own thing based on my values, based on what I care about, based on my skills and interests? How can I use my, 15 years of education learning improv and theater and all these different things that don't just teach you how to do the thing himself, but also teach you lessons that other people don't learn because they're not doing those things. And how can I bring that into the forefront of kind of what I'm doing today so that, people can have more opportunities to do some of these things we're talking about, like, leave their job and do work that makes sense for them. So I think who it's for, like in its essence, is for somebody who feels like they want to be more connected to their creativity. So either they want to be more connected to their creativity because they want to be starting their own creative business, which I've done successfully multiple times, or they're being connected to they want to be more connected to their creativity because the business that they're running, they feel is getting stale and stagnant,
Love that.
or they want to be more connected to their creativity because they feel their life is feeling stale and stagnant and they just want to start, figuring out what creative outlets are available to them. So it really is just people who want to be more connected to their creativity. And the people I've worked with up till now have been mostly people who are trying to build a business out of some sort of, part of their creativity.
Mhm.
But I think that ultimately, like down the line, it's just going to be people who feel like they can see that I'm living this life that's so kind of carefree and that I'm enjoying so much. And then they want to find ways to, what's the next obvious step? And how can we start building a roadmap and a vision for you to be getting towards where you want to be? One final point on that, because I did just share a lot. Like when a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago, I felt hopeless, literally about the future, like about my future. I felt like I'm never going to own a home. I'm never going to, be able to have a comfortable life and have a family. Terrified about existential crises, like what's going on with the world, climate change, etc. And what I realized is that I'm deciding to give my energy away to all of that. And I can decide to give my energy towards all the things I care about and love. But first, you have to figure out what all that stuff is and figure out kind of what your vision is for the ideal version of your future. And it's really nice to have somebody who's helping you along to do all that, because it's a lonely road to do it yourself. So that's kind of like a nugget of like what a first kind of call with me would be about.
I love that, because this really, it just kind of want to clarify, because, people could think, oh, a creativity coach, I'm an artist and they're going to help me build a business, or I'm always been an accountant and they're going to help me learn to draw. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about tapping into your own creativity and making it part of really elevating your whole energy.
I'm not the only artist in the room.
I'm not
first
the
line
only
on my
artist in the
website, as you
room. I
mentioned.
love that. That's perfect. And we are just getting tons of thank yous on the chat feed, Philip. This has been amazing. If there were one thing from your creativity coaching that you could leave the group with here, next obvious step that most people could, some exercise to find the next obvious step, something like that, what would you say that we could tell people to do today, tomorrow, to help move themselves forward?
Pam, I know what it is. It's the very first moment of creative kind of expression that I had in my life, which was not, I'm getting a little emotional. That's why I'm getting kind of stuttery here. It was not like societally kind of something I was comfortable sharing with the world, which meant that it was true. Was when I was very young, in like grade 5 or 6, I wrote a poem. And it just flowed out of me. It just happened. A poem just happened and it flowed out of me onto computer. It was called Tears in grade 5 or 6. It was called Tears, and there were no rules to this poem. It just flowed out of me, right? People think poem, oh, it's got to rhyme. Oh, it's got to have whatever. It's got to have metaphor. It's got to have simile, blah, blah, blah. That's how we're taught about poetry in English class. No, poetry is actually just releasing. It's just releasing. So take out a pen and paper and literally write a poem. It can be as simple as writing a single word. A single word can be a poem. Anything can be a poem. You don't have to share it with anybody. You can put it, you can hide it somewhere so nobody ever sees it. You can throw it out. You can rip it up after. Write a poem and try to make it just as, don't hold back. Don't be afraid of what it might reveal about yourself, what it might mean, all this other stuff. What you're doing is you're allowing yourself to release just a little bit. You're allowing yourself to release just a little bit, and nobody else has to be involved in that process. And that's actually the first exercise. I'm writing a book, 8 lessons from the creative arts for building a better normal. And I'm almost done writing the first draft of this book. And that's the first exercise in the book. So that's why it was top of mind.
I love that. And what I heard you not say, but say is there is no way to do this exercise wrong.
The only way to do it wrong is if you're questioning whether or not you're doing it right.
Yep. Otherwise, if you just don't do it, that is fantastic.
Or don't do it. And then that is actually the first page in the second chapter of the book is like, did you do that exercise? Because this exercise is pass fail. Either you did it and you pass, or you didn't and you fail. And that means, and if you fail, go back and reread the first chapter, because you shouldn't be continuing this book if you are not unwilling to do that first exercise.
So it goes back to what you said, the unwilling. I love that.
And I think some of us are there. That's okay.
I love it.
That's okay if you're there, if you're unwilling. I really hope and pray for you, if you're there and unwillingness, that you have people in your life who have a hand outstretched to open you up a little bit, and hopefully allow you to become a little bit more willing.
I love that. I don't know if you saw this, but Moshe wrote, I think that's beautiful. Thank you so much.
It's very, very beautiful, profound.
Beautiful. So I imagine that a lot of people are going to want to know where they can get more Philip Zave. So what is it that we tell them here in the comments of where to find out more about you and how to reach you?
Absolutely. So I'm very, I'm an active participant in a lot of the socials.
Awesome.
So on Facebook, you can find me. I feel like this is on Facebook, Philip Zave. I'm not sure if I'm tagged in this, but
you will be. We'll tag anything.
Yeah, so just
in this post.
Feel free to add me as a friend. Feel free to reach out to me via Facebook Messenger. I respond to everybody who reaches out, and
awesome.
I love to just have conversations with people. That's what I'm about. Literally, most of my time, as yours is spent, Pam, just having conversations with people with absolutely no pretense. I am the opposite of a salesperson. I just really want to help people grow. That's really, I want to see a world where people are more connected to themselves and doing the work that they think is important. Other socials, Instagram at Philip Zave on Instagram. Also TikTok. I'm on TikTok, Philip Zave on TikTok. If you Google Philip Zave, Zave on Google, Philip Zave Photography, I should be the first link for my website, my photography website. And I'm super open and available to anybody who wants to connect.
Well, I am so grateful that you're part of the Profit Concierge Group. The fact that our paths crossed brings me joy again today, and I think of you periodically throughout things. I just, your warmth is just so present, and I love the connection. I'm so glad that you're here to share everything with us today. I know we will stay in touch. I know I'm having you in Pennsylvania or Atlanta.
Oh yeah. I love to travel. I'm so devastated by the inability to travel. And I'm very excited about the future ability to travel again. Especially America. I think America is an incredible country. It's a shame that there's a lot of trouble happening, but I know that Americans are unbelievably resilient and good at navigating
and recovering
exactly. I have a lot of faith in the American people, and I have a lot of faith in the Canadian people as well, and
best
people in general.
Ever, you guys, best neighbors ever. So I said there was one point at which if Canada was over here and the U.S. was over here, we were going to start tipping a little bit. The whole continent was going to tip towards Canada because of the flood of my friends that were moving up there. So but
that's hilarious.
I think we're working things out. It's just going to take some time.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Pam, for having me on this amazing show that has lots of people watching. It's so cool.
I am loving it. Everybody here live, it was great to see you. Great to have your questions. I'm glad we could serve them up to Philip in real time. Anybody watching on replay, I know you're going to want to reach out to Philip. He's an amazing human. And I wish all the rest of you a fantastic Tuesday. And we will see you again later this week.
Absolutely.